Welcome everybody. Welcome to our August monthly meeting for the North Texas Archeological Society. I am Jimmy Barrera, the president of the society, and I appreciate the turnout we've got this month. This is our largest turnout here in the room. So I appreciate everybody who's coming, and I hope y'all enjoy, whether you're a member or a guest. It's a great society. Go through some of our general announcements before we get to the reason everybody came here, Dr. Slade. But in the past month or so, we've had at least a couple of NTAS activities, and Dr. Whitley and the Baku project were working in New Mexico. And briefly, how was y'all's project?
It was good.
It was great.
It was raining, but really good, and we were able to get to finish up one of the pit houses, found some more pots and stuff.
Awesome. Well, first on Zoom, Dr. Whitley gave us a positive summary there, and you'll be our featured speaker in October on the Baku project. And then also this past month in Jones County, James Everett and myself did a reconnaissance on some archaeological sites, quite interesting. And that is in our August newsletter. So if you haven't seen that yet, we have a little summary. And we will continue to work on that, probably become quite an extensive project, given the type of archaeological sites that we have access to. Texas Archaeology Month, that is October. Texas Archaeology Month is October, and each year, excuse me, try not to crash around. Each year there are more and more TAM, Texas Archaeology Month events than the previous year. And this year is certainly the case. So as we get to October, NTAS already has on the books at least 2 TAM events, and we're likely going to have more than that, including the fact that we're co-hosting the TAS annual meeting in Tyler. But one of the interesting opportunities for Texas Archaeology Month is to help with the TAM kit. And this is for children. So this is to get kids interested in archaeology as kind of a science activity. And the TAM kit really has to do with little archaeology activities that they can do quickly in kind of an archaeology fair setting. So the TAM coordinator, Miss Maggie Moore with the Texas Historical Commission, is looking for volunteers to help make TAM kits. And so that's a plea we've put out over and over and over. And honestly, it's probably the last time I see it, but I know they're still looking for volunteers. So if interested, please contact Maggie Moore. And then about the TAS annual meeting, also looking for volunteers. So the North Texas Archeological Society is co-hosting the TAS annual meeting in Tyler. And we're going to co-host it with the University of Texas at Tyler. And that's where the meeting will be held. And so there's a lot of things that go into making sure that a big conference like that goes off without a hitch. We need help. So if you're interested, it's a great way to participate in an archaeology conference, see behind the scenes, and meet a lot of really great people. So if interested, Chris Mikes is our contact. And then those TAM events that we were talking about, we have at least a couple on the books, one in Denton, one in Weatherford. And these are going to be great opportunities for the general public to come out and learn about archaeology. And the North Texas Archeological Society will have a booth. There's going to be various activities that'll be going on at each of these events. And so one, be aware if you want to come out, just check it out and participate. But 2, I know we're still looking for volunteers. And so those points of contact right there are the folks to contact if interested. Next month, Dr. Heather Parra from down in Victoria, Texas, the Museum of the Coastal Bend, will be our guest speaker. And she'll be talking about some very interesting archaeology in Britain, the first Vikings in Britain, which I believe is related to her dissertation research there. So what's that? Should be quite interesting. New members. So here we are on the new members who have joined NTAS since our last monthly meeting, since the July meeting. So just take a moment. That's a lot of new members, and a lot of that is owed to Dr. Whitley and the Baku project, who certainly brought in some new members, and various other folks who are part of the NTAS executive committee. They're constantly behind the scenes, working on activities, spreading the word. So it's just all hands on deck, but it's a growing society, and it's very healthy growth. So we're now, as of about now, up to 280 members. Again, the highest number we've ever had. It's going to be the same until we get to next year. We do offer free memberships, so we just keep that up there each month. We really don't get a lot of applicants for that, but that's for students. And so all we ask is that they fill out a membership form. We see a class schedule, and they provide a statement about their interest in archaeology. That's it. It's pretty straightforward, and then they would have a free membership. Fundraisers that are going on here, we have the gear y'all have seen out there, the hats, the business cards, and the handmade scoops for excavation that Mr. Mike Shannon back there has made. He's got one in his hand right now. Those scoops have seen a lot of archaeology, and so think about adding that to your toolkit. And then we have the archaeology books here that are part of or Marvin Glasgow's library. And so James Everett is our point of contact if you have interest on the books, and Gwen over here will help you with any of your purchases. So, and for the folks on Zoom, we did send out the book lists at least twice, so check your email and you'll have an idea of the books that are available if you haven't already looked at that. All right, call for papers. So we're currently in the second call for papers at the University of Texas Tyler TAS annual meeting. So if you're interested in presenting paper, poster, or just attending, then is a great time to submit something or register. So registration is open. So you would go to the TAS website and you would register. And the last time I heard, there were still free spots available for students. So all a student would have to do is, what's that, Linda?
I was going to say you're about at the halfway mark.
Okay, about half of those are gone. All right.
Just about halfway.
So there's still some left. It's a yeah. If you want to go to Tyler to go attend the archaeology conference, you could get your registration for free, and there's really no application at all. You just go to the TS website, you go to registration, and you check that you're a student. It's free. We do have scholarships available. So the NTAS scholarships are for TAS events, and that covers your TAS membership and your registration. So that's just another thing to consider. If you needed your membership and registration covered, we could do that. And with that, I'm going to get out of the way and hand this over to our guest speaker, Dr. Alan Slade. Put that up on your lapel, and you probably want to hook that on your pants somewhere. And then I'm gonna. All right, do that. It stops. Yeah, we can hear you.
There you go.
Let me.
Good evening. Thank you for the invite. Can I start?
Let me get your slide going here.
So I'll take it everybody's familiar with Clovis. I don't have to go through all that rigmarole, do I?
1 second. I'm about to get the folks on Zoom caught up with us here. Okay, on Zoom, are you seeing the screen, Dr. Slade's first screen here? Okay, I think with that, we're good to go.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I'll hop out and shoot over here.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And hello, everybody on Zoom. So tonight I'll be talking about the Texas Clovis Fluted point survey. Some of you who may have seen the one from the Panhandle, there'll be a few slides which will be similar, but we'll just go through them. So, brief introduction and the history of the survey. The post-2007 surveys, that's what I've been dealing with since 2019. The current aims and objectives, early results, Clovis in the North Texas region. What I tend to do is I'll do the same talk to all the different regions. but then I have an emphasis on the actual region where I've been invited to talk. And then future aims and objectives of the survey. So the first survey was initiated in 1985 by Professor David Meltzer, and it was published in 1986. 205 points were reported from 95 of the 254 counties of Texas. So very small amount of the actual total amount of the counties at the time. And as you can see, I know people can't see this on Zoom, but to the west, you've got some big gaps, which is like where the Big Bend National and State Parks are, and then the border of El Paso, and obviously down here is that's the shadow of the Rio Grande, so all over this blank area would be Mexico. You've also got a lot of gaps up in the northeast and the east side of the Panhandle, down here on the coastal area, and down here in the south. In 1995, a second survey was published by Meltzer and Beaver, which added 201 more points from a further 32 counties. But again, you can see that the actual the patterns were sort of similar. There's a lot more in the central area, and so that slide compares the two. So that little shaded area of El Paso is just 1 point. So just one turn up.
Alan?
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of folks on the Zoom say they can't hear very well. It's muffled. I'm not sure if there's anything that we can do here. Do we have our little?
Our microphone's here. Just try to stay as close to that as you can.
I will.
I'll move it over.
Wouldn't be a talk if there wasn't an electronic.
Exactly. But you're speaking to people even in Arizona, so you have to speak loud.
There might be some from England as well.
Yes.
So yeah, you can see that the patterns are sort of similar there. Not much is really sort of filled in. And then the second update to the survey, the third published publication was 2007, and that actually was the last publication on the actual survey. Excuse me, a further 138 points were added and 21 new counties. So that's 554 when I took the survey on. And you can still see that the patterns haven't changed that much. So it basically shows that the points added to all the existing areas or counties that had them. And again, you can see what's really happened there. On the far side, on that third slide, for you, those of you on Zoom, you can see that there's two black areas. And I think, yeah, the one down here, that's just for one site, which is McFadden Beach. This one is Gaines County. There's quite a few points from Gaines County from several different sites. So in 2019, I took over the directorship of the survey. It was Mike Collins who brought me in to work on the prehistory and research project, which he funded whilst he was still part of the Galt School, the GSAR from Texas. And after a chat with him and the director of TARL and also Dave Meltzer, I thought it'd be a great idea to try and get the survey under a repository rather than David just dealing with it at SMU. So all post-2007 point records had been sent to David, and then he boxed them all up and sent them to me at TARL. This is still pre-COVID, so there was a lot of activity going on at TARL, so I was able to get everything sorted before the pandemic really hit. An extensive literature review of Texas archaeological journals and society newsletters was carried out. I was very fortunate to be able to do that during COVID. And that might have been one of the few things that COVID was actually quite sort of helpful for, because it enabled me to just sort of work from home and get access to all the journals and literature. So I had a lot more time to actually go through them, trying to pick up things that were missed, because David was picking up point occurrences which were like Clovis. I was looking at fluted points, Clovis-like, Fulsome-like, Fulsome-oid, or even just projectile point. And a lot of things which went underneath the radar was actually able to be picked up. The search was extended to Texas site reports. TARL has got an amazing amount of all those. And so it was just literally flicking through and looking at the Paleo-Indian element of the report. If there was a Paleo-Indian element, just to see what was there. Sometimes there was a Clovis point. A call for data was sent out to all Texas journals and some of the bigger ones, like the Plains and even the SAA archaeological record. Made an outreach to university and local museums. A lot of those collections were not actually made available, and some of the museums didn't even know what they had. They knew they were fluted points, but some of them turned out to be Clovis. And very importantly, personal visits to Texas heritage shows. I wasn't personally known to a lot of these collectors, and they probably were confused by my accent. So by the time I got the information from them, then it was too late. But seriously, I managed to make some good friends and good contacts. And once you've made a couple of contacts with a couple of them, then some others want to come forward and share their information too. So the current aims and objectives: to update the survey to a museum archive standard. I think that's important because it's not been done before. David had all this boxed up in his office, all pretty much well recorded, but not available and not as an archive, which would be conducive to a modern museum. Compile a digital record of all the records since 1995. Again, I was able to do that during the COVID pandemic. It's not like it's gone, but a lot of people call it it's gone. Things have just become a lot easier and a lot more relaxed. But during the height of it, I was just allowed to go into TARL and I was just digitizing all the records. Set up a digital database for academic and public access. What we're trying to do is have a database similar to PIDBA. Those of you who are not aware, PIDBA is the Paleo-Indian database of projectile points in America. The problem with PIDBA is that anyone can add that data. So a 12-year-old say, oh, I've got 30 Clovis points. They might not be Clovis, it could be anything. So what we're trying to do is have it monitored and administered by somebody at TARL, and then the actual public access part would be made available without the sensitive information of the landowner or the collections person name, or actually where it come from, if it was their personal address, if they didn't want that to be made available. Expand on counties and regions that are underrepresented by Clovis points. A big effort to try and find Clovis points from these underrepresented counties. This is a map that was generated just a few months ago, and that's the current standing of what we are. And you can see a lot of those gaps have now been filled in. The two red areas, and I'm sorry for the ones on Zoom, in Central Texas, one of them is the Gault and Hogeye cache, which together make up for 100 points. David knew about these in previous surveys, but the material wasn't available to be put onto record. And there you see the comparison. There's still quite a few white areas. There's no real reason why I don't think that those white areas shouldn't have Clovis points. It could be just archaeological representation. Up in the north, the Panhandle, I know Scott Scott Browzelski, I don't know if he's listening tonight, but he helped me fill in a couple of these up here. So when this becomes part of this year's analysis, 2 or 3 of these up here in the far north of the Panhandle will be filled in. And also some of these in the North Texas and East Panhandle region. Heather, who will be your speaker next month, has helped me a lot filling down here. Tom Hester and her colleague Bill Birmingham helped Heather identify some Clovis points which she had in her collections, which again fell under radar from when David did it. So all these points, all these areas down here are thanks to Heather and her staff at the Museum of the Coastal Bend. The interesting area down here in the south, for those of you on Zoom, again, it's the white area right in the down on the south bit. I've been told by a colleague that these are all privately owned ranches. So some of these counties here might have just 2 or 3 ranches on them. It's very, very likely that there's going to be Clovis points within those collections because everybody's got collections down there, but they don't have an arrowhead show, which they all go to. So perhaps trying to reach out to some of these people to convince them. I'm not trying to take their points away, but if they've got Clovis points down there, it would be great, and I'm sure it would be wonderful to fill in some of this area. We actually found a site that was reported but not published on a mammoth that was found, and it reported to have 6 points embedded in some of its bones. And we all know if you've got points from a mammoth, they're most likely going to be Clovis. So early results. So far, a further 266 points from 28 new counties have been added. That's the highest amount of points in any one survey, and it's also the highest amount of new counties. That's 804 points now from 178. Still quite a few counties that haven't been reported from. McFadden Beach reorganised, and McFadden Beach was, to put it politely, a nightmare. For those of you who are not familiar with McFadden Beach, it's about a 30-mile stretch of beach in Jefferson County, where a number of rivers flow down into the Gulf, and then the points are washed up on the beach, normally after a high tide or a bad storm, but most commonly after a hurricane. And this has been happening for years, and there's been 3 major collections going from 80 points to 150. No one's really known how many Clovis points have been found in that time. Tanner and Turner did the last big review of it, but what's been happening over the last few surveys is points have been duplicated. And so some points have been added 2 or 3 times, and some have been missed off completely. So again, I spent about 2 or 3 months just going for all the records and come down to a realistic total of about 108. And it's not going to be the exact total, it's probably more than that. But when you're trying to keep a survey with information that's going to be good for people, you want to try and get it as accurate as possible. And of course, galt and hog eye have now been added. Similar patterns to other surveys, as we've shown, the amount of isolates compared to actual archaeological sites. I'm giving a site 2 or more points. You're going to be unlucky to just have a stray point fall out your leather bag, or if you throw it at an animal and miss. But if you've got 2 or more points, then it's more or less like a little surface site or evidence of even like an occupation site that's been there. We're not looking at just complete points also, we're looking at bases. So Clovis in the Northeast region, sorry, North Texas region. Now, the TAS has a different way of describing North Texas. Your North Texas Archeological Research uses some other. So what I've done is predominantly that's North Central Texas with a few, sorry, go back, with a few, all these down here, which would appear in the central region. But I've added them in here because it's part of the North Texas Archeological map. So 39 counties in the region. 3 new counties were added whilst I was doing the project. You've got Pilot Grove. I don't know if anybody knows these sites, but I've got references for them if you need to or would like to have them. Pilot Grove Creek site in Collin County, Sonia Mammoth in Collin County, Peace River in Wool Bud, I do apologise for my pronunciation, and Prospect in Clay County. Now, as you can see, there's only Peace River that had 4, and I've got it on good authority that all of those actually come from one location. It was like on the banks of that Peace River. Those are the locations of the sites in red triangles. Still 13 counties to report. Those are the counties that don't have. If anybody out there knows of any points from those counties, I'll be very, very pleased. Several significant Clovis sites were found in the region. Aubrey and Louisville, you've obviously heard about those. There was a talk from Reed Ferry a little while ago. McLean and Yellowhawk in Taylor, and the Field Ramp site from Cook County. And the black triangles show you where they're from. Aubrey is one of the oldest Clovis sites with a date of 11,570 plus or minus. That is probably one of the more reliable old dates. So when you're looking at a Clovis date, we try to keep a radiocarbon date as the marker. There's probably older Clovis sites than that, and there's probably younger ones than the youngest date. But that's the one we've got at the moment, which has got a good, reliable or sort of, semi-reliable date. Louisville, those of you who weren't aware of the Louisville site, it originally had dates of 37,000. All the Crook family, and I don't mean that name to be synonymous with anything bad, it was W.W. Crook, then it was W.W. Crook Jr., and more recently it was W.W. Dub Crook III. They've all had dealings with that site. The Smithsonian went there in the late 70s and early 80s. After re-investigation, the dates came from like 3 or 4 halves, around about 11,000. I haven't got a tight date for that. Some of the publication work has not been made available. I think it's still in the Smithsonian because Dennis was working on that again. Dennis Stanford, the ones of you who might be familiar with that name, he sadly passed about 7 years ago. And it's his fault that I'm in Texas. McLean, found in 1938 by Cyrus Ray. It was the points were found amongst mammoth in Mulberry Creek off of Clear Fork. And the Yellowhawk site, a Clovis workshop quarry found in the Callahan Divide. It doesn't say what the raw material is, but I would be very surprised if it wasn't Edwards chert. And the Field Ranch site, surface collected campsite on the Elm Fork of the Trinity River. Now that wasn't a very well known site. It might be to you guys, but it wasn't to me. I was doing a lot of Clovis research, either for my dissertation or for my master's. We call them the other way around over back home. So I won't say thesis or dissertation, because it's around the other way. But the Field Ranch site didn't pop up, and that was one of the ones which I managed to find going through the site report. But it's an interesting site if none of you are actually familiar with it. Just to give you an idea what was found at Aubrey, that's the famous point that was found. Sorry. Again, sorry for Zoom, I'm just pointing to the little flake on the far side. it looks like it could be a distal chip. Now, there's no way of really telling if it's Clovis or not, but if it's a tight context of a Clovis site, there's no reason why that couldn't be a little distal tip from another Clovis point. But as the record will state, there's one point from Albury that's been discovered there. Louisville, sorry about the picture, but the actual publications of Louisville are not very clear in the actual photos, but that point is, I believe, still in amongst Dennis's possessions at the Smithsonian. His wife, Peggy Jodrey, didn't get permission to go through. There was a big hoo-ha going on during the pandemic just after Dennis died, and no one was allowed in. And then when the federal movers went in to take everything out of his office, a lot of the material went missing. So hopefully the Louisville point isn't missing, but it was in the collections at Smithsonian with Dennis. That's the McLean point, or the McLean point, however you'd like to pronounce it. That was published in Sellers' 1952 publication. That's the Yellow Hawk point. It's a lovely point. It's very well worked. It's probably reworked down from a larger point, but it's a very nice little point. So the field branch site suggests, on people on Zoom, I'm looking at figure F. It's the large base at the bottom. That's what they've classed as a Clovis, which looks very much like a Clovis. But I'm also interested in the point at the top right. If you look on the left-hand side, it looks very Clovis-like. And to coin a phrase from Mike Collins, Clovicious, he called it. Very Clovicious. But if you look on the right-hand face or the obverse face, it does look very, very Folsom-like. So that's a very interesting point. I would like to see that. And it might even be that it could be one of these, reluctant to say, one of these transitional phases where Clovis and Folsom sort of merge into each other. But that's a nice point. We'll get back to what I'm going to do with that shortly. So the future aims and objectives. Continue to build on the survey. So my part in this will finish on the 31st of August. Then I have to write it up. So it will not be a completely shut book. And whilst I do my future research, which I'll come to shortly, I hope to build on what has been started. Anything that's been, what I'd like is not for another 10 years to go by and then somebody else has to do another survey. What I would like is for it to be naturally sort of just looking after itself. So the people at TARL get records constantly, possibly 1, 2 a month or something like that. That's manageable, so it can just build upon on a sort of slowly graduate, evolving sort of project. Reach out to more collectors and local museums. I think that's an important, not just for the Clovis Point survey, but to build trust with the collectors. They've got a lot of good knowledge, they've got a lot of good material, and if we could start working together, I know Heather's been working with collectors down in the Museum of Coastal Bend. I know Scott has been working up in the Panhandle. I'm sure some of you guys are working with them. To build trust with these collectors and local museums, I think is the way forward. Be interesting to see what you guys think. Have the survey digitally up and running at TARL by 2023. That's a very doable target. Again, because of museum resources and time restraints, I do not want to give Mary Beth, who runs the collections at TARL, a big nightmare. I want it all done and dusted. Give it to her and say, look, it's all there. They've got a new director. You might be aware of his name, Fred Valdez. And with Fred, there's a new administration officer, Jordan. She's great, and she's already said that she she'll be very pleased to add a link to the TARL website for the Texas Clovis Fluted Point Survey, and there'll be a little link on there, and people can download information, they can see the database, and they'll be able to also get record sheets and explanations of how to actually record points. Extend the survey to bordering US states and Mexico. That's a big task. I'm not looking at the whole of Mexico, and I'm not looking at the whole of Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, New Mexico. But I do believe there was no political boundaries in those days. Just going across, a few miles across the border, some of those points could be Texas points. There was a big collection come to light a while ago from the east of Texas, Dana Harper, and a lot of the points in his collection were found in parishes in Louisiana. And when looking at the map, they're all parishes that border Texas. Some of the material is not raw material from Louisiana. It's Edwards chert or it's alabates, which is not available in Louisiana. So I've got this little picture of them running through the swamps, chasing a mastodon, and then lost it. I don't think they were coming from Louisiana. Try to encourage other US states to set up similar surveys. What would be a great thing for me to be able to do would be go to the SAAs next year or the following year and have a little one of these little forums and try to show what we've done in Texas with all the surveys, not just mine, but David's and Michael Beaver's as well, and say, look, this is quite easy to set up, and if it's done now, students can help, and it'd be nice little projects for students, undergraduate projects, master's projects, even PhDs. Potentially start a Texas Folsom Fluted Point Survey. That's what I would really like to do over the next few years. My funding from Mike Collins, the prehistory research project, finishes very soon. So we're actively, myself and a colleague, Steve Davis, are trying to find outlets for funding where we could fund ourselves for another 3 years and use the Clovis Point Survey to instigate a Folsom Point Survey. I think it would be very interesting to see if the patterns of Clovis are replicated in Folsom, i.e. are there site patterns similar? Do points turn up in sites or are they isolates? Are the pathways and the migration routes similar? Are raw materials coming in from the same direction? All lots very interesting information could be gained from both of them, and they would complement each other both very well, I think. So thank you. Just a few people to say thank you to, and thank you all for listening.
All right, thank you, Dr. Slade. So I want to start by asking for questions from the floor here in the room. Polly.
So I was wondering, what exactly are the criteria for a point being put into the survey, and then for the minimum data points you're looking for? And really my train of thought is going to collectors, and I was really glad to see that you went to some point fairs and things like that. But I know a lot of the collector stuff that we look at is Facebook posts and less reliable, less data or information in there. So I was kind of wondering how that works.
We get a lot of members of the public who send us images or an email saying, I've got this point. 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's not a Clovis point. I've had to eat humble pie 3 times this year. One of them was one of the nicest Clovis points I think I've ever seen. Some guy found it in his creek. He was digging out, it was blocked. And because he had ranches either side, it was his responsibility to clear his part out because to let the creek still flow. And he brought this point to us, and it was about 10 inches, completely unbroken. And it was made on a variety of Edwards called pedernales. Beautiful. And when you see a Clovis point, and if you're familiar with working with them, you know when a Clovis point is a Clovis point. When I did my dissertation and thesis, Mike Collins and Dennis Stanford and Bruce Bradley helped me on the road of trying to identify. And one of their advices was, look, there's only about 5 or 6 fluted point types in North America. When you know what it's not, it's going to be Clovis. Now, I know that's a very bad, I'll never say that to a student, but it works because Folsom points are very diagnostic. Dalton are plain view, that's not fluted, but some of them are basally thinned. It's much easier to identify other types. And when you've got something left over, we don't think older than Clovis was fluted. So you've got a Clovis point. For my dissertation, I concluded that I didn't like the word Clovis. I don't think it should be a technological entity. You've got in the Midwest, you've got a point that those classic Clovis lookalike points, but there's loads of other Clovis around the country and in Texas that show so much variation that, you know, they're Clovis aged fluted points. So I don't like that term Clovis, but getting back to your original question, I take as much information as I can, but I'd like to start with the county. If there's another more tighter provenience for that, like a town or a farm or a creek or a river, that'd be great too. And any personal information, you know, if it's really personal, it's found under our trash bin outside our front door, that can be great to put on the survey, but it wouldn't make that available for public use. And then just the major characteristics of dimensions and the raw material type is important.
One thing I forgot, when we get a question from the room, if we can repeat it, because the folks on Zoom can't always hear the question from the room. So any other questions from the room? Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
So I noticed that there was a good number from Dallas County.
Yes.
So my guess is, I mean, there's so much development.
That would be one of the, yeah.
I saw none in Harriet County.
Which one?
Harriet County.
Yes.
Fort Worth.
Yeah.
A lot of big cities. Why? I mean, do you think it's just a matter of time, or like?
Yeah, there's no reason why they should be.
Can we summarize for Zoom?
Yeah, can we repeat that for the Zoom folks? So when they ask a question from here, let's repeat
So
it.
do the Zoom folks hear the question?
No, they can't hear it. So we have to repeat it and then answer the question.
So
his question was, you know, what about Dallas and Tarrant County Clovis points
yeah, so
and the number in the counties?
why is there more points from Dallas County and hardly any from Tarrant County? I would say, I don't know. There's no reason why there shouldn't be. I don't think it's just because of the construction, because probably just as much construction is going on in Fort Worth area. It's archaeological bias, it's just bad luck. And there's probably lots of people that will have some of those points in Tarrant County. Do you live in Tarrant County?
I live in Dallas.
Oh, but you should go over there and tell them to report the ones from. That'd be great, thank you.
All right. Any other questions on the floor in here? Okay, how about questions? We got questions in Zoom. Go ahead, James.
Yes, we've got one question in Zoom that relates to what was just asked. It says, interesting that Dallas County, Denton County, Parker County all have sites with Clovis points, but Tarrant County has none. I understood that a field school from SMU found a Clovis site in northwest Tarrant County in the late 1990s. or early 2000s. Have you heard about that at SMU?
If that was the case, then David Meltzer would have put that on one of his surveys. I don't know every one of the 805 records. I can go back and look at that quite easily. But I'd be very surprised because of David Meltzer's connections with SMU, why he would miss that off his survey. But I will check that up, and I'll get back to who was the person who was the question?
Bill Perdue asked the question. He's a local member.
Yeah, I know Bill, so
Okay.
tell Bill that I'll get back to him.
All right. A question here is asked, is the Clovis point that you mentioned from El Paso, was it found at Fort Bliss?
I don't know. Sometimes we don't have any further.
I want to repeat that question. I don't know if they can hear me.
Oh, so the point from El Paso, was it found in
At Fort Bliss.
Fort Bliss? Again, I don't know for certain. I can go and check the survey record. I just know that there was one point that's been recorded from El Paso, and I think it's part of the El Paso Archeological Society record entry. So it should be easy enough to find out where that came from.
All right. And we have a comment here from Brett Williamson. He says, I contributed a point from near Meridian recently. Pretty easy to do for anyone who has a Clovis point. And I'm not a collector, I'm a steward, he says. It would be nice to see the Clovis point distribution on the atlas that that stewards can access. And I know you're working for that.
So, Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
To answer Mr. Williamson's question, I would like your help because I've been trying to get some assistance from the Texas Historical Commission to see if we can start using some of the survey results. And so far, I've had no sort of commitment from them to say that that would be the case. So that would be interesting. I would like if stewards could help us do that, because I think that would be a fantastic tool. You've got all that other information. It just another little sentence at the bottom. If I could just give each, which I didn't say actually, each Clovis point has been given a unique number. I went through all the surveys. So David's first survey, 205, second survey will have then 206 to 300 and something, 385 to 504, and then from 504 up to 805. Each one of those will have a unique inventory number. So we can just click on the website or the database and find what that point, where it comes from, when it was added to the survey, and all the information that's coming to it.
All right.
So that could be added to the atlas quite easily.
All right, and you may not remember this without looking at your map, but Allison Weathers is perhaps our youngest active member, and she asked the question, has there ever been a recording of a Clovis point in Wise County?
And what's this young lady's name?
Allison.
Hey, Alison. I don't know. So we could, I could.
Can get back to your map. We might be able to.
If she could tell me where, because I don't know where all these
It's
200.
very close to us here.
Oh, is it?
Just up
Okay.
the highway.
Okay.
Since it's not Tarrant, they're probably has it.
Typical, you get the hardest question from the young lady. Is that one over there?
No, just keep going back till you get to that nice colorful. Well,
There you go.
why is this show? But
Right here above Parker.
So where's Wise?
but I spell the middle.
Northwest of-
Oh, yeah, okay, so just
Yeah,
there.
right there. But if we could see the
Yeah.
colored map, it will show right, oh, there. Yes, it looks like there's,
Is it-
it looks like it's green on that one.
Is it that one?
Just there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can tell Alison that there's 1 point from Wise County. And if she leaves her details or her parents' details, I can send her the record for that, if she wants to.
All right.
And
We've got a lot of compliments on the presentation, but I see no other questions at this point.
Well, tell them thank you very much.
how about any other questions from the floor in here?
Yeah, I just have
Alan?
one to kind of dovetail with the adding this stuff to the atlas. When that link goes up on TARL for this database, what is that going to look like when someone clicks on it? Is it like going to be a spreadsheet thing? Is it kind of interactive? You click on a point, they all have individual IDs. You click on that and it gives you the history of how it was identified, such, et cetera, photos, that kind of thing.
So the question from inside here was how the actual database at TARL will be implemented and how it will be accessed. That's something that I'm actually working with at the moment with a colleague, Steve Davis, who I mentioned earlier, and also colleagues at TARL. It's going to be something similar to a database where you'll click on to a certain area and then you can put in a keyword like a county, or I wouldn't put Clovis Point in, not at the moment, but if you put a county in, or if you knew of a site, a lot of the Clovis Point have got trinomials, but the majority of them haven't. So it would literally be someone like that young lady, Alison, I want to know all the points from Wise County. One would pop up, and then that would have the unique number. Hopefully in future, it would have an atlas connection. It would also have either a hyperlink or a PDF link to go to the actual point record and the photographic record. All the points that I've dealt with since 2007, we've been scanning. So there's good quality scans. The ones previously are either illustrations hand drawn by the finder, or they've been digital photos that were passed on to David. It's not ideal, but we can only work with what we've got. And as databases become much more user-friendly, but it probably won't be my job to do that, because that's not just above my pay grade, it's above my intelligence level too.
But no, I think it's good to know that you can, I mean, ultimately, there might be more folks that come around, they can look at a photo.
Sure.
Focus point and say, well, I've got that in my collection or whatever else.
And it's becoming obvious at the moment that some of these have been duplicated, and I've been able to sort of like remove that. The first survey from 1985, either the finder has passed or the family have sold that point onto somebody else, and it finds itself up into a different collection. And then that person says, oh, we've got a Clovis Point from Brewster County. And then you have a look and say, well, that looks very similar to the other one. And then you just sort of check the dimensions. It's been quite useful for me to try and go back to transferring inches to centimeters again. But once you get within the same sort of parameters, and it's got a broken tip or it's got a base missing, and it comes from the same named creek, you're probably thinking it's probably the same point. So we just duplicate the record, but we won't give it another unique number.
All right. How about any questions from the floor on Zoom? How about on Zoom?
Two things that popped up here. Again, just compliments.
Okay.
Great presentation. I have a question. Are you doing anything at the TAS annual meeting where you can interact with lots of?
Is that gentleman here who's the guy who's doing the call for papers?
Chris Mice?
Yeah.
He's not here.
Okay, so he told me, I asked him, did you want me to do a presentation, to do a poster, or to just do as like a, like a forum? He said, why not do all three? so it looks like I've been stitched. So I'm definitely going to do a talk, because Tyler that fits into the east. So I can use that as my East Texas region. I should probably also put a poster up, because then I can put different things on there and probably advertise the Folsom Point survey on that, and just do a one-to-one talk with anybody who's interested. So probably all three.
You know, it's a combination with the East Texas Archeological Society. So
Right.
we'll be hitting the East
Yeah,
Texas.
but I'm definitely going to Tyler. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Any more questions from the floor in here or from Zoom? All right, if that's it. Thank you, Dr. Slade.
Oh, thank
Wonderful
you.
presentation. And I wish everybody a good night, and we'll see you all next month for the September meeting. Thank you.
I'll be here then. too.
Those of you who are in the room, drive book before you leave, and also.
All right.
got 10
Thanks, Jimmy.
photos.
Yeah, well, everybody on Zoom, y'all have a great night out there.
Go look at the photos.